Hey everyone, and welcome to this latest video brought to you by Connect Church. My name is Tom MacDonald, lead pastor of this wonderful community. My privilege to share these videos with you. And we're getting towards the end of these sessions now. We've already looked at who we are as Connect Church. We focused on our values, those things that determine the way we do things as a community. And then we focused on this chunk of things that matter most to us. What matters most to us? And it can be summarized with this phrase: building the kingdom and making disciples. Hopefully that's been really helpful for you to give you a really clear foundation of what kind of church we are. So now we're thinking about actually how we express that in terms of engagement, in terms of belonging. In the last session, we talked about overall about belonging. We gave you some insights into the way that we think about belonging. We acknowledged that some communities treat belonging as kind of the end of a process. That before you can belong, you must first behave in a certain way. There's that kind of principle that you have to look like us and talk like us before you can be part of us. And also you need to believe certain things, that before you can even belong, we need to know that you have the same ideas, same ideology, same theology, same insights as we have. So there's a kind of pattern that says you have to behave, believe, and then you can belong. That is not our understanding of what we want to be as Connect Church. Our understanding is that we want to be a community where you can find a sense of belonging first. You can come and belong just as you are. As long as you understand that our hope as you join our community is that you will learn to believe and explore what you believe in Jesus. And in doing so, you will then begin to become like him in your behavior. So for us, it's not behave, believe, belong, but it's belong, believe, behave. And we talked about in order to help you belong, we have this phase of life, if you like, called connect, where we'll do what we can to make connections and get to know you as a person. And then that next phase, once you feel like you do start to belong, is we want to create a community, an environment that is conducive for you growing in your understanding and your belief around Jesus. And then when you're at that place, we want to create what we call a covenant partnership, a covenant relationship with you to help you in your journey to Christ likeness. We're going to talk for a whole session about that covenant partners thing in just a few days. But for now, we're going to focus on this community bit, that kind of shift between that belonging and believing bit. How can you be part of this community? There are two very specific ways. One is through connect groups, which we'll talk about in our next session. What we're going to talk about in this session is locations. A reminder to you that Connect Church is one church in multiple locations. We are one church in that we have one vision, building the kingdom and making disciples. And we have one culture, those 5 values that we talked about at the beginning, dependent on God for immeasurably more. Everyone has value and adds value. We seek the well-being of our community. We don't maintain, we multiply. We're joyfully all in. Those things are consistent across all of our locations. We are one church because we share one resource. Though some churches have particular equipment and some people give to particular communities, we treat ourselves as one family and therefore one shared resource. And we also have one team overseeing our Connect Church family. We'll talk about that in our penultimate session of these 21. So we are one church in so many ways, but we are also multiple locations, and that does impact how you belong. Our hope is that as you belong to a location, you believe that you believe and understand that you belong to this wider Connect Church family. It's like being part of a small, intimate household that is part of a bigger, wider family, like you might have in your life. For example, I live currently with my wife, Debbie. We are a household. We are part of our family, the MacDonald family, and the Collins family, Debbie's family. We're part of a location. We're part of a family. That's what it means to belong to one of our locations at Connect Church. When we say that we are one church and there's things that are consistent, that's also true of our locations. In fact, we say that there are 5 areas that are present in all of our locations, but that each location is free and encouraged to express those things in a way that is particular to their community. So let me explain what the 5 things are. Across all of our locations, you will find present these 5 things: care, children and youth provision, discipleship, gatherings, and mission. Let me very quickly explain them. In each location, there will be an emphasis on care. In fact, one of the primary reasons we want people to commit to a location is so that we know where they are connected for care. Each location has its own way of making sure that those who are part of their location are cared for. Now, let me just say that care is not provided always by the senior leader, by the location pastor. We fundamentally believe in pastoral share, that the location cares for the location. Of course, there are leaders who play a part in that, but being part of a location means that we know who is caring for who. That is so important. Central to each location is care, done differently in different places, but fundamental to who we are. Children's and youth provisions will be available in every location that we are part of. Again, that may look completely different in some places. It may be more extreme or more flexible in different places, but it's an emphasis that we want to have across all of our locations. Discipleship. Each location is committed as part of our vision and as our culture to providing places for discipleship to happen. A primary way might be connect groups, which we'll talk about in our next session, but each location has a focus on discipleship, but it may look different. Gatherings. Each location will make sure that there are ways in which that location can gather together for sharing communion, for corporate prayer, for a sense of community and family. Gatherings are a central part of the life of a location. And mission. We have one vision, building the kingdom and making disciples. And we have lots of different ways of expressing that. And each location will express that differently. They will be about the work that we are called to do as Connect. And if you like, translate that, interpret that for their particular location. So we are one church with one vision, one values, one team, one resource. But each location is a unique expression of 5 key things. That's what we want it to look like. So the location you're part of might feel slightly different to other locations that are part of the Connect Church family, but there will be so much consistency through the values and the vision and the kind of DNA of who we are. Let me summarize our understanding of locations quite simply for you. We wholeheartedly believe that the best thing for you and the best thing for me is to be part of the Connect Church family, but to be committed to a location. It's that sense of being committed and planted that helps us be healthy. Now, that doesn't mean that you are restricted to one location. You're never allowed to step foot in a different location, or that you're not allowed to communicate or engage with ministries or activities happening in other locations. Of course not. We're a family. We are one church. But the location aspect is really to do with where you are planted, where you have asked God to plant you and to grow you and multiply you. That's why we believe committing to a location is significant. Of course, we want movement to happen. We want relationships to happen. We want connection to happen. But we think that movement happens best when it comes from a rooted place of being in and committed to a location. So maybe for some of you, it's about committing to a location. Maybe for some of you, as you're exploring the Connect Church family, it's about exploring the locations and seeing where you are best planted. Now, one thing I get asked relatively regularly is, what's the plan for future locations? The plan at the moment is to have some, but we don't have a strategy for church planting. It's really important to explain that. We believe that God has given us a vision, building the kingdom and making disciples, and he's given us values to go along the way. And one of them is we don't maintain, we multiply. So our expectation is that as we move forward, obedient to God and his call in our lives as a church, we expect to see multiplication happen. And by proxy, we expect to see new locations being planted as part of the Connect Church family. However, our strategy is to be the movement that God is calling us to be, expecting that the fruit will be planting. The strategy itself is not planting. Why that's important is that means that we haven't sat down as a lead pastor and as our leadership team and said, let's have 5 plants in 5 years, or here's the 5 places where we're going to plant next. What we've said is we are going to commit to building the kingdom and making disciples underneath these principles, these foundational things that we're exploring together now. And as we do that, we expect to have to plant and adapt as we go. So that's the strategy. However, having said all of that, there are 3 principles, 3 P's, that we are looking for in terms of God's leading for where locations might be. Let me just quickly explain them to you. We might sense God speaking to us about particular people, either leaders who God has placed on our hearts who we think are clearly going to be location pastors, or people in terms of a gathering or beginnings of a gathering of people where it seems like a location would be appropriate. God might place people on our heart, which gives us an insight into the kind of location that we might look to start. Secondly, there might be a particular place. It's possible that God, as we are moving and growing, would begin to show us a place through the speaking of the Holy Spirit and the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives, where He wants us to begin to be more present and more active. That is perfectly possible. Thirdly, it could be a purpose, that God could call us to be about a particular ministry or activity, or to reach a particular type of people. He might give us a passion and a purpose for a particular activity, and that would be an indicator of a certain type of location or not. Not that we would ever create a location that is specifically for one group of people and not another, but for example, if we felt God heavily putting on our hearts a call to plant and to reach people who are particularly isolated and vulnerable, then there might be particular places where we would look to plant because of that heart that He's given us. Not that we would say people can only come to this location if they're vulnerable, but strategically, if God said reach the vulnerable, that might determine where we go. I hope that makes sense to you. Here's the most important thing. We are one family. We are Connect Church, all together, one family on mission. But we believe the healthiest thing for you and for me is to be planted in one of our locations. That's a place where we will find care, where we'll find discipleship, where our kids and young people can get plugged in, where we can gather together in a sizable gathering that is healthy for us to journey together. And it's a place where we can engage in a frontline mission in our lives. That can all happen through a location. And by being committed and planted in a particular location, we're also making ourselves accountable to that place. We think that's really important. We hope that's something that you feel able to do. So here's what we want. We want everyone to feel part of the Connect Church family. But we want everyone to feel committed to a particular location for this season at least. All that we might build the kingdom and make disciples for Jesus' sake. Amen.